costume.
Costuming for your persona?
No, it's persona and costume. Wow.
Persona and costuming.
I'm so sorry. We are out of it.
Costuming and persona building. Thank you.
I was about to jog down the aisle and look at the billboard.
No,
I was about to go on my phone for it.
I feel like we're really instilling some confidence.
Gosh, yeah.
Thank you. Costuming and persona building. I am Madame Askew, and
I am Assistant Mechanic Marlene. You will often see me looking for Asgard Automaton.
We have her head right now, so she's not around.
She's resting.
I'm Lady Wheelsworth, her boss. So we work on different projects as well as the robot. The robot is our main thing, but we also have engineer that we work on and Asgard as well as other projects.
Excellent. So we are all denizens of Steampunk Landia. And one of the fun things about the world of steampunk is that there is no canon. There's a lots of things that are embraced by steampunk, but there's no singular canon. So it's really a genre and a fandom and a sort of aesthetic movement. It's all about your personal vision. But many of us like to incorporate a character or a persona as part of our experience. So it's a little LARP adjacent and definitely in the cosplay realm. But that means for many of us, creating a character and creating costumes to support that character, huge part of the fun. So, my darling chums, my dear friends, you have an incredible story of how you developed your characters. Would you share a little bit about the genesis of your characters for everyone, since they are just meeting you potentially, so they understand a little bit about where you're coming from?
Certainly.
To start off with me, you should start. You started before me, actually, but it's
we can do that.
We're good.
Shaking it up.
The rhythm died. So starting off with, I started steampunk with my father. We started going to conventions together, and we're enjoying ourselves. And then the pandemic happened, and everything shut down. And once we were able to go back to Wild WestCon specifically, which is a Tucson specific steampunk convention, there was a robot who basically was getting very overwhelmed by people and taking photos of her. And so me and my dad decided, okay, we are gonna take a step back, not overwhelm her even more, and go do our own thing. So we would go to tea dueling, we would do and have fun. And then later that night, the robot was by herself, hadn't eaten all day, hadn't done anything other than get overwhelmed by photos. So my dad sat her down and was like, I'm buying you dinner. This is not okay. And
it was literally, sit down, shut up, I'm buying you dinner.
Yeah, and so I came afterwards because I was doing something, and me and her got to talking, and we slowly became acquaintances. And it turns out she was going to have to leave the next day for Sunday because they couldn't get the hotel reservation. But her kiddo really wanted to do the costume contest. So me and my dad were like, okay, I'm sleeping on the pull-up bed anyways because ADA accessibility in hotel rooms. And my dad's sleeping on another one. So we have a spare bed. So we were like, okay, let's move all of our stuff to the side. Come on, you guys will all stay with us. Fun little tidbit, there was a party right up on the floor above us that night. And we're like, oh, okay, that's great. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I wasn't throwing it.
You were not. Charity was.
I was just at it.
You were at it.
Causing problems.
To be fair, I and my little one were so tired that we slept through the entire party above us.
They did. We were out there going, oh, this is interesting. This is where the nice people are. Hi. When we came to come sleep, we ended up waiting 2 to 3 hours because we were like, okay, we're hanging out with people. But the next day she did the costuming and we went to lunch a couple of times. And that's when she needed a social media manager because she wanted to start doing this professionally. And I was like, okay, I will be your social media manager, she asked. And the deal was I go to conventions with her and hang out on my own while she does her thing. And you can continue from there.
I will continue from there. You're absolutely right. I threw off the rhythm.
You did.
Because
Usually you start with your
chronologically-
dad.
Usually I start with my dad because chronologically that happened first.
Yes.
So we're going to jump back in time a little
We're
bit.
time travelers.
We're
It's
time
fine.
travelers. It's fine.
Totally
There's
fine.
no such thing as chronological here. So my journey in steampunk started back in 2000 and I think that was 2000 and somewhere between 2010 2012. And I was writing a book and decided I needed to go to a steampunk convention because the book was going to be steampunk so that I could understand what the heck I was writing about. And it sucked me in immediately, absolutely immediately. And I thought to myself, you know what? My bored to death retired dad would probably really like this because he's a retired aerospace engineer. And there's a whole lot of mechanics and, whimsical things that happen in steampunk just because that tends to be part of the aesthetic and the vibe. So I told him, Dad, you really need to come with me to this small event. Just come for a day. You don't have to dress up. You don't have to do anything. Just come and see if you like it. He's like, yeah, I'm too old for this stuff. I'm like, no, Dad. There are people older than you who are enjoying the crap out of steampunk. You really just need to come and see what it's like, just to get out of the house.
Hello.
Good morning. And he's like, okay, fine. I'll check this out. So he came to a very small little convention in the middle of Wisconsin at this little lake resort. He stayed for a day in jeans and a t-shirt, and just people watching, and within a couple of hours of me just going and having fun and leaving him to do whatever he wanted, I came back to him and first thing he said to me is, there are people my age here. Yes, Dad. Yes, there are. He goes, this could be fun. I want to go to that one that you were telling me about before, which was the largest steampunk convention called TeslaCon in that area. I'm like, okay, cool. We can figure something out. So as time goes by, he's talking about getting a costume ready for TeslaCon to try it out. And he wasn't sure what his persona name should be because a lot of steampunkers really enjoy having these whimsical, fanciful, wonderful persona names like Madame Askew. And there's almost always a story behind the name. And at that point, I was like, oh, Dad, you don't need to come up with a persona name in 30 seconds. I've been in steampunk for almost 3 years and I still don't have a persona. And he looks at me and he goes, okay. I think I know who I am. I'm Sir Bevel Involute, mad scientist and inventor. And I went, that's not fair. How can you come up with a persona name in 30 seconds? He goes, well, maybe I should just invent a daughter that doesn't talk back. And I went, oh, that's a horrible idea. Let's do it. So we did. He invented an automaton to serve him tea while he worked on his mad scientisty inventions, and didn't talk back to him. He was mad that his daughter had left to go on her own adventures, and he just felt like he needed somebody to be at home with him. So he invented a second generation articulating robotic device, which we now know as Asgard. And I was very excited to put on like a full costume. After a couple of years, I'm like, okay, now I can do something that's fun and stands out. But I'm terrified of people. I want to stand out, but I don't want to talk to anybody. He said she doesn't talk back, so she just won't talk. It's fine. And for several years, that's exactly how it went. I was a robot that walked down the hallway. I'd bow to you, and then I just move on because that's what I was programmed to do. And I'm like, thank God, social niceties. So I'd appear once to twice a year for about 6 years. Well, for a few years. And then the pandemic happened. And yeah, around that time, my family found ourselves moving from Wisconsin to Arizona to help take care of the dad. And there was this convention coming up after all of this pandemic stuff. And I was like, it'd be fun to don the costume again. And I wonder if maybe this is something that I could enjoy more because I really missed it. So I'm like, okay, Tucson Comic Con, that sounds fun. Somebody had talked to me about it at the last TeslaCon that I was at. They said, you really need to come to it. You live in Phoenix. It's close by. Please, come to Tesla or yeah, that was Mark. Come to Wild West Con. I was like, okay, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I went to Wild West Con. My husband drove, and I donned the robot makeup along the way. And I arrived in full regalia. And going through the resort, I just kept getting flocked by people. And it was really cool. I'm like, oh, all right. So this is something that's more than just, oh, we love you at TeslaCon because we see you every year thing. This has potential. The whole day went by, and I was like, I'm shaken. I'm a little upset about the hotel room thing, but that's okay. And then her dad sat me down. We had dinner. The whole hotel room thing went by.
In my whole thing,
yeah.
And that's where your characters came from.
That's where our characters came from.
Excellent.
Fun fact: she named me.
I have a tendency to name people at events.
I was originally just Lady Wheels, and then Madam Askew was like, "That's not gonna stand. We're just gonna slowly write in Worth at the end," and then handed it, and then it got called up for $2. And I was like, "Oh, okay, bye."
Listen, it's more fancy.
I like it.
It's fancier. It's more ridiculous.
It is.
Very steampunk aesthetic. So my story does not have as many highs and lows and as much pathos as my chums. But I was named by other chums. So we have a really lively steampunk community here in Tucson. And I was running the Steampunk Society and running events. And it's a long story. I'm going to cut to the chase. I was at an event where I intended to be wildly early. I arrived only moderately early, which I consider late. And so I was madly dashing around, and my hat kept tilting further to the side of my head. And my chums were like, "Oh my gosh, your hat's so askew." And I was like, "I know. Also, I'm running late. Also, hussies, get with the program." Because when I'm running late, I'm very focused on the things that need to happen. They're like, "You're so askew. You could be Madam Askew." And I'm like, "Why are you saddling me with this reminder of my failures as a group leader, a human being, a person in the universe?" She's like, branding me with a scarlet A, but of a different meaning than that whole book situation, right?
Ankles.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am a hussy, but at the time I was like, I don't know if I like this, but it sort of stuck, and it's got a wonderful, the name has a wonderful poetry to it. And so initially I thought that I would make Madam into a sort of villainous character for my travels, and I do this sort of evil queen look and show up and be sort of mean. And then I tried, and I was like, I'm not good at that. I want to be nice to people. I don't like being mean. It makes me feel like I need therapy. And then I feel really guilty and I can't take it. So I couldn't play mean. So I went, so Madam went from something that was kind of teasing in a kind way, but that I was being neurotic about, to being something where I was like, I'll make her a villain, to sort of settling in around me. I've been portraying my time traveling alter ego for 13 years. So even though there is, let us say, a difference between the alter ego and the person who performs the character, there's a lot of shared experience in life. And now the name is like an old glove. And it's very comfortable. And I love inhabiting the character. And I always wear my hat askew on purpose. On purpose. Yeah, that's how Madam Askew was born. So, but I brought up something, and I think we're here to talk not just about how we came to character, but how we developed the depths of our character and how we tell that story visually with our costumes. Because you passing us in the hallway are not necessarily going to be like, let's do a 30-minute CNN style interview about your backstory. You want to get it as a snapshot as we're walking through the vendor hall or luring you into our booth to do hamster wars or tea dueling or what have you, because we're nonsensical people.
Yes.
So, would you each share some detail of your costume that you think is a very particular standout? It's like your hero detail that starts your story for people.
Definitely the soot all over the face. Definitely just screams mechanic, as well as putting it all over my fingers. When you have Asgard and Lady Whisworth together, you notice that the soot is on Lady Whisworth's face, and then the kind of persona starts happening because of that. So.
Mine is also quite face driven. With Asgard Automaton, having that metallic look all over the face, and the lines and the contours that are done to make those shapes is a lot of fun. It gives a very, very much an automaton marionette kind of feel, with the lines down the chin and across the cheeks. But what my favorite detail about that is the rivets, which are just flat back metallic pearls that get glued on along those lines. And that 3D detail tends to pop it out really well, and really draws people in.
So, as I mentioned, the hat, the chapeau is always askew for me. But also, clearly, I am an absolutely ridiculous person traveling through time. So I tend to have very flamboyant costumes, and I'm leaning into that sort of flamboyance. The 19th century, from which my whole wardrobe is inspired, is a time of great flamboyance. So bringing the Liberace treatment to a 19th century costume really takes some forethought. And in the early periods, I think I was a lot more understated. Hard to imagine. And I've sort of developed as we've gone along performing that whether or not they wore capes with their afternoon dresses in the 19th century, that doesn't matter to me. I'm Madame Askew. Capes are for like breakfast, right? Tiaras are for going shopping. Just like embrace the camp of it all for me. So it's just that flamboyant camp feature that unifies my costumes. So when you are looking at your details, my darlings, do you think about your character, your backstory, your persona first? Or does a detail come into your brain and you think, I really want to do this aesthetically. How do I work it into my character portrayal? How do I make it make sense for my character? So is it character first or details first for you?
I have a really good example for that. I now have an elegant Lady Whisworth look. That's very different from me in the sense that I still have soot on my face when I do like a full face of makeup, and I won't put in, like, if I was regularly wearing makeup, I would not just do like a soot face. If my face is dirty, it's getting washed. But the character herself would definitely just be like, okay, I blew up stuff into my face. We're putting on a face anyways and just going because I don't have time. So I think the details kind of help make the character for me rather than the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This one's a little tough. This one's a little bit tough.
I love the hard questions.
So I have two personas now, and Assistant Mechanic Marlene is quite new. So I'm still figuring out how to make a persona.
I mean, it's kind of you, except
it is me. Yeah.
It's basically an excuse for us to be able to do more content without having 2 hours of makeup.
For me, I would say that the details for Asgard when they first started were highly influenced by my dad. with his aerospace and mechanical engineering background. So a lot of her details, such as the springs on the elbows, that came directly from him. I never would have thought of that because he's like, look, if you've got pistons in your elbows and your elbows go all the way out, those pistons are now stuck. They can't come back. You need some sort of force to cause it to retract. Let's go look for springs.
That's so good.
There's a whole fun story behind that. But a lot of the details in the crank box and the movements and everything, that all came from my dad. In terms of Asgard growing a personality, she's a blank canvas. So it's a lot of trial and error for her. And in that regard, we think of personality first. If we want to add a detail to it, does it match the personality that we want her to eventually have?
She's very childlike, by the way.
She's innocent, yeah. Or, not as innocent as children tend to be.
Mischievous and childlike, I would say.
You're a bad influence, I'd say.
She's a trickster character. Honestly, she's a trickster archetype. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Asgard looks the same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought you knew. I'm like, didn't you know you're the trickster scamp?
Trickster scamp.
I'm the one that's just tired all the time because of her.
Yeah, well,
it's true.
You are saddled with a being made of chaos. In our duo with my bestie, I'm the being made of chaos, which is really fun. He gets to play the straight man, and neither of us are straight. So it's a good times had by all, especially behind the scenes. So I'm like, now you have to be the straight man. Anyway, I derailed you.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Those are beautiful stories, though, and I love that the details for the costume have sort of helped develop your character because you really use the mechanics of the costume to influence your movements and your pantomime, but also that there's this connection forever with your father and the way that the costume was designed initially. And the springs on the elbows are really spiffy.
Redesigns, actually.
They're really, did you make them?
I helped, actually. It's the first time we ever did a fabric prop. So she came up with the idea for the fabric, and then I was like, okay, you need more detail inside because you're looking inside a robot.
A robot, yeah.
So that's where we came up with the wires and the gears, and I sewed that all in.
Ooh, I love that. No, see, so one of the things I love about this process of developing a persona and using your costuming to tell that story is that it's collaborative. It's not only collaborative with your chums, as we just demonstrated in real time, where you sort of like talk things out and say, like, how can we do this? How can we make this look more like your character? There's also a collaboration with you wearing the costume and the people you're interacting with who want to know the story. So one of the things I love about cosplay and LARPing and all of this nonsense is that it's a shared experience. You can just swan about through the grocery store in a costume if you just wanted to wear a costume, and people would be like, sure. But no one's going to come up and be like, tell me about your character, or do improv with you, or be like, oh my God, it's Deadpool in a disco ball spangled bikini. That's my favorite Deadpool. I've got to go disco with Deadpool. No one's going to do that to you in the grocery store. But that was just an example, not something I've actually done. So but at a convention and events and things like this, people are going to engage with you. So they want to participate in the story experience. It's sort of like live action, real time, RPG, fun times. Or again, this is how it's a little LARP-like, being in a cosplay at all times. But like, you don't have to throw dice or call spells or anything. You just get to improv with people and share a story and create a story and explore your character together. And I think that's really groovy. I love that experience. And you two, that's like a huge part of what you're doing when you're at conventions. My partner and I tend to like lure people into events to do that. We're like, no, come with us. We've got like a very simple event. Promise it won't hurt. You will walk out with a persona medals, possibly tea stains on your cravat, but no pain and suffering, promise. That you go onto the floor, you go into the space, inhabiting your characters, and you elicit a response from people. You get them to join you in that place of playtime.
I think that's also a really interesting point is how we differently do the whole persona / costuming thing. Because me and Marlene are on the floor interactive rather than big events, and you guys do the big events and have a very whimsical atmosphere in events versus when we have ours on the little tiny, what is the word? Improv on the floor. And you guys improv a lot as well with your personas and stuff. And it's
We never stop.
so entertaining. But I like the fact that we have like different ways to go about it because it shows that you can go about it different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, so this is very much at the heart of it. There's no one answer and there's no right answer. All we can do is share our experiences with how we've done it and hopefully provide some inspiration. So, all right. There are things about my character, my backstory that have developed on the fly in the space of engaging with people. And I will share some of them. But also I want to hear about some moments for you that have been a thing where you've developed a part of your shared backstory or individual backstory by being in the moment with people on the convention floor. Do you want me to share mine first while you...
I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
I think one of my biggest ones for me is Sterling out of character loves duckies.
Oh, yes.
And a couple of steampunkers found that out and now give me duckies. And so now it's kind of canon that Lady Wheelsworth loves duckies too, because I literally will do a stream of thanking people for all the duckies I get because I get so many duckies now. And so it's just this thing where like, kind of like if you have watched Has-Been, Lucifer loving duckies, this is like Lady Wheelsworth loving duckies. It's that bad.
She's a little obsessed.
She's a little obsessed with duckies. It's a thing. I actually now have earrings that I'm probably going to try to figure out how to implement into an outfit because it needs to be part of Lady Wheelsworth. And so...
No, I have a really important question.
Yes.
When are you going to make a frame to go on your chair that has ducky perches? When are we going to get Ducky-geddon?
Well, we have been joking about a giant ducky.
A giant ducky that goes around for a Lucifer cosplay.
Which will also probably be used for like summertime, summertime Wheelsworth or something like that.
We have plans.
We have
just gotta
plans.
Implement the plans.
Yeah.
Oh, please do it. Oh my God. So good. All right. So Ducky Queen.
Yes.
Now you all know, we all know you're never safe. Duckies for life.
No.
What about you?
Okay, so I once teased this one while we were working on a project. We were recording for a project and we had a gooseneck phone stand attached to the table, right?
Context, I'm neurospicy and like fighting things.
She likes to have the stimulation, right? So it was positioned in such a way where the gooseneck kind of went in front of her face when she stopped by it, and she looked right at me and she leaned in. I'm like, don't do it. That's my gooseneck. Don't do it. And she went heart and just bit down on the phone stand. I'm like, okay, must we? And she's like, yes. And so she looked at me and she bit it some more. And I'm like, all right, I see how this is going to go.
I'm a little more chaotic than my persona. I think,
Yes,
honestly.
yes, most definitely. But then, in revenge, I decided Asgard was going to start biting everything.
No, it's so
Everything.
good.
So, and we're like, you know what? This could be a very interactive part of the gimmick. Because one of the things that I can do is threaten to put something in my mouth, not actually do it if it belongs to somebody else, you know, gotta stay sanitary. But then she has something to scold me about out on the floor. And that can
is like I, as Lady Wheelsworth, can't do the stimming biting thing. So
Well,
I'm just
you could if you really wanted to.
I
but
could
it's
if
not
I really wanted to, but it's not what I want to do for the persona.
Biteable wrenches.
We've been talking about trying to get something in there.
No.
There's a wonderful chocolate company called Sweet Steam. They make chocolate cogs.
So
These
good.
chocolate gears.
So good.
I'm hoping that I can commission them for something a little bit smaller because my mouth is tiny. And the gears are like this big.
No, they're monstrous.
They're huge. You can't just bite into it, on the floor and expect it.
No.
But we want to talk to them about making something kind of metallic for Asgard to eat, and they said they'd be willing to talk about it. So they'd love to be a part of that.
Oh, I love that so much. They're delightful too.
They are. They're delightful. Look them up and buy their chocolate. It's delicious.
But yeah, my revenge plot became canon for Asgard to bite things.
Revenge plot.
Revenge plot.
A gooseneck biting scenario. Wow.
So I have so many stories over the last 13 years about ways in which my character backstory and really the whole temporal entourage universe that we accidentally created through the art of improv for realsies developed like in real time with people engaging and interacting, and stuff that we have since incorporated into our personas. But I'm going to share the celery story. So
I've never heard the celery story. All I know is celery exists.
All right.
And we'll have it on video so everyone will know the
Celery story. So if you've never been to one of my events, and I don't think any of you have been, I host this thing called tea dueling with my bestie, the Grand Arbiter. And tea dueling can take many forms. But we do Western territorial tea dueling, which is like more chaos, more camp. It's actually Western territorial frontier tea dueling, or WTF tea dueling. Thank you for going there with me. Thanks. And so it's rowdy and howdy. We like it big and campy, and just we bring a Japanese game show announcer vibe to the experience.
I never made that connection.
So years and years ago, without getting into the whole ambiance of tea dueling, just to give you the vibes, I was at an event and we were doing a variety of things, including an improv panel. And one of the prompts was celery. Now listen, what do you do with improv and celery? You create an 8 to 10 year long joke, apparently. But in that moment, we were just like, yeah, let's run with it. And the celery developed a cult and a following and a religion, and became imbued with the power to like cure people of ailments, metaphysical ailments, not like real ailments. And so we were like, well, this is a really fun bit. This was a fun gag. I'm going to put that to the side. But then I went to another event in San Diego. People brought me a bouquet of celery. Yes, real fresh celery. And the Grand Arbiter, who's my normal performing partner, hadn't been there. Only one of our butlers had been there. And so only he and I knew the gag. And everyone was like, why are people giving you celery? And I was like, because it is the sacred celery. And my partner was like, why is it sacred? I was like, ask no questions. I cannot explain in the 2 minutes we have available. And he's like, okay. At the same time that year, our friends planned the most tremendous hoax, the biggest prank to play on us all weekend. Like 100 people were involved in this prank. They came as our arch enemies, the Caffeinati,
Oh, that was them. Okay.
bent on bringing the evil beam to all to thwart our tea dueling plans. And so we're being given sacred celery, and in the background, people are walking by in these huge brown robes with placards that say, rise and shine, and they're chanting, rise and shine, as they troll us at our tea duel. And it's just sort of evolving, and we're like, our characters are changing in real time. We're developing a whole steampunk world right now at this convention, and we've got this celery, and now we have an arch nemesis, the Caffeinati. They're leaving beans. No, they left beans for us everywhere. They sent us notes. They put up signs. We could not catch them. We were going absolutely cocoa banana pants throughout that weekend. And so we get to the final tea duel, and we've still got the celery. This bouquet of celery. And this is a 3-day event, and we've still got these people showing up in robes. And so they've come to the final, and we unmask them. And it's honestly very shocking. We did not expect who was behind it all. And so the Grand Arbiter goes into hyperdrive, and he takes the celery and he breaks it apart. And he's like, I must cleanse you all now with the power of the celery. And we proceeded to do this huge sort of ceremonial cleansing of the audience with celery. And now, when you come to a tea duel and you have what's called a splodge, we cleanse you with celery. And everyone's like, why the celery? And I'm like, I cannot explain this in 2 minutes. It's absurd. But just roll with it. And I promise you, if you embrace the celery,
Everything will be okay.
just laugh about it because it's absurd. So that is how being willing to go yes and roll with the experience. We developed a whole canon of secret societies, a cult of celery, and also it's why occasionally we wear celery pinned to our clothing. Whew. I could not have planned that. Never in a million years was I like, let me figure out how to put root vegetables on my clothes.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've lost the thread a little bit. How are we doing on time?
We're doing good. We
Good.
got little 10 minutes.
10 minutes. All right. So now that I've regaled all of you, thank you for laughing and enjoying. Thank you for that, because that was a very long story for a short payday.
Perfect. I love it.
But this is also about you and your questions about some of the ways to support your persona with your costuming. And I hope what you're hearing from us is that the details matter. And whether you put the details first or the persona first, there should be a melding of the two that kind of makes sense in the logic of your character. But it doesn't have to be chicken and egg. It can be egg then chicken, and it can swap back and forth. But any questions, my darlings?
You seem like you might have one.
I know you've been laughing. You've been very engaged. You look so good. I was just like, okay. Oh no, can I do a thing? Will you roll with me?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Are you in cosplay right now?
Torment. Technically, question mark?
Technically, question mark is fine. Do you feel comfortable standing? You don't have to be on camera, but if you could stand where we can see you. All right. And do a little turn. Oh my goodness. You look so good. You are serving. All right. But let's talk about how we might decipher some character details from your costume. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
I have no idea what character this is.
I have no idea either.
I do not recognize the fandom. If you want to share, we can use that, but you don't have to.
I can give the very, very small version of it, because otherwise I will go on for the rest of the panel. Small version is a video game called the Blackout Club, and you are a group of teenagers in a small town in the radio quiet zone in Virginia, and you are starting to wake up with just in random places, with dirt all over you, with random soreness, with clothes that you swear you threw away like 2 years ago, but they're now on you again.
Ooh.
And even worse, your friend has been kidnapped.
Oh.
And you are trying to explore what the heck is going on in your town. And this is specifically the jacket for actually the antagonistic characters of kids that are working for the spoiler alert, it's a cult.
Yeah, the
Ah,
eyeball kind of
Felt
gave it away.
cultish,
It's-
yes.
Yes.
This is for one of the kids that is working for the cult, actually, and they are stalkers.
Yeah, so if
Ooh.
you turn around,
Yeah, look
right
at this.
there, that
Yes.
was kind of what gave it away. That it
It's-
was kind of something horror / culty.
Right, it's
Mhm.
that eyeball,
Yeah,
you know,
Mhm.
that symbolic eyeball is just like a classic occult.
it is.
Probably something a little bit dodgy going on. If not, it's the storyteller being like, I'm going to give you a plot twist and they're the good guys. It's like, really? The eyeball guys are normally bad. So it's got this eyeball detail. The
Eyeball.
eyeball. No, I'm telling you, the eyeball guys are normally the bad guys. Except when they're not. So So I love this iconic jacket you're wearing. It's definitely, it seems to me like it's your hero detail. And when I say hero, I mean it's the detail or the garment that's doing the big lifting in telling your story. So for me, often the hero detail is my chapeau, but sometimes it's my neckline. So, you know, I often will have a hero detail. Sometimes for me, it's a hero fabric because I have a small budget and I need to make it have impact. But you've got this cool jacket. This is your hero detail and it tells a big story on its own for me. I see like this beautiful color blocking that's going on. So it looks very official, not just something picked off the street. It's a uniform, but you're not wearing it in a uniform way. So to me, and I'll let you two jump in and give your assessment as well. I don't have to, you know, hug the assessment train. But to me, it tells me the story is that your persona is not someone who's married to following the rules and being part of this. Your rest of your outfit is far too non-uniform. It's very much like your personality forward. You're not allowing yourself to be, you know, indoctrinated into a homogenous mindset. It's a little bit punk, and I like it. So
You just need to join this team.
yeah, no. Well, I mean, we're always going to try and lure you
We
into
always do,
steampunk.
yes,
We
yes.
can't help ourselves.
Yes,
I thought about it. I've been to several compliment videos.
Oh,
then you really need
Here.
to come to that.
Here. then you know.
They do many events. FYI.
Yeah.
Promote.
All right.
Assessment wise, I would say, yeah, the casual atmosphere is actually kind of cool for me.
Yeah.
It's very laid back to me, and I do really enjoy that. Also, just the culty vibes is really fun.
The
honestly,
the culty vibes are good.
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely gives. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna deal with this kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Which is kind of actually really fun. I sometimes when you're doing a persona, you don't have to go like whoosh, like all the way up high.
There's-
you can
yeah.
do like a middle ground
There's a lot
for
of
your outfits.
really fun detail to just enjoy on the jacket. You mentioned knowing a little what little I do about where the cosplay comes from. You mentioned that the protagonist wakes up with they're covered in dirt, they're sore, and this is a very culty vibe, and it's clean. It's clean. There's no roughness to it, indicative of the heroes of the story.
That are dirty.
Right.
Mm.
Exactly.
That's good.
So when
Oh,
you
yeah.
mentioned that, I was like, ooh, something's going on here because this is a very clean look.
Yes. So that is what we were able to get without even knowing the game you're playing, just by seeing your costume. And so I kind of wanted to do this exercise and thank you for being such a good sport about it,
Thank you.
because it's fun to show the ways in which you can engage in story with a person non-verbally. I think the verbal interplay is fun, but sometimes we only have each other for 10 seconds in the hallway. It's like, oh my God, you're so cool. And you have to go. But you leave with a whole story about that character in your head, right or wrong. And everybody's version of a story is, generally speaking, the one they want to have. So no, there's not necessarily any moral value to the stories people take away. There's not necessarily a rightness or wrongness to it, but it may not be the story you meant them to take away, right? So it's fun to try and reinforce your story with your details.
Mhm.
Thank you. You are an amazing sport. Your cosplay is fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I love it. And thank you for sharing all those details with us.
Join steampunk. It's okay.
Come to steampunk. We have tea. We have
And
3
cookies.
minutes. And cookies, like the dark side. All right, 3 minutes. Any more questions? Yes. Yes.
I have a cosplay, my own cosplay.
Yes.
It's at my seamstress right now because part of it broke. So I'll wear it this weekend.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh wow. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it. But I'm a silent character.
Ooh.
So So I need some tips because I've only been doing this for about 6 months. So
Oh.
Yourself a handler. Because people are
That's
going to
my
ask.
husband.
Okay, good.
Good.
People are going to ask you questions.
Yep.
And you can't talk during it. So have your husband know the knowledge so that he can give the knowledge on it.
he's doing his very best.
It's one of those
It's
things.
practice.
It's practice. One thing that I have learned is I started out being terrified of people, and that's why the robot was mute. By the time we were good friends, and she was my social media manager, she had to tell me one day. She's like, Marlene, you have to stay in character. You keep breaking character to answer people's questions. And I'm like, yeah, but they're asking me the question. She's like, you need to shut up. You need to let somebody else answer the questions. You need a handler. And I'm like, you're right. I do. I don't have anybody like that yet. And I thought, oh, wait, she's coming to conventions with me. Hey, Sterling,
Hi.
would you be
Yo.
my mechanic? And that's how the dynamic started. We're still learning from it. But one of the things that I have a tendency to do as I'm learning that it's as much pantomime as it is trying to create your own silent content is you'll have a few core gimmicks. So you'll have a few things that you like to do to interact with people. I tend to steal hats and I tend to bite things because those are easily interactive without needing words. But when people ask me questions directly, it's awkward to try and redirect them to the person that can answer the question. So I've started I started responding with a shy gimmick. I stand up and I hide behind her lamppost. Like, oh, you asked me a question, I'm not prepared to answer it. And that seems to really help because then that gives her the opportunity to say, hey, I'm her mechanic. Can I answer any questions for you? Or be, her sassy self, however she wants to play it out. And that gives me the freedom to stay silent. So finding a nonverbal response that seamlessly directs them to the person who's going to be your handler. What I'm learning is for silent characters especially, handlers can't just be in the background prepared to answer questions or hand out business cards. They need to be kind of sort of part of it, even if they're not actively like acting it out with you.
If you really want to build a persona, that is. If you want it just to be separate, then no. But if you want it to be like a duo handler silent type, it helps when you have the person that's talking being able to interact with the character as well as just being a part of the story. It gives more of a whole thing.
It does help.
Also, one thing she didn't say, big gestures with your hands and stuff, very important.
It is. It is very important.
Since you can't speak, so you're
and
doing
your
all the
whole
gestures.
like, how's your vision? How's your vision in there? Oh, nice.
I'm really good with like peripheral.
Mhm.
I do a lot of this just to make sure.
Yeah.
Stepping on children, not something I want to do.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that about you.
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, big gestures. I rely very heavily on my big painted eyebrows. And I didn't realize how mimish I was. But I'm embracing that because it takes a lot of stress off of having to create your own silent content. If you're anything like me, there's a lot of pressure there to try and do something different. There's not a lot different that we can do without words or without some form of communication. So playing around with people, like I bite things, I annoy her on purpose. And I tend to, like, in the steampunk community, if I and go up to somebody and I gesture at something and act all fascinated, they've started handing those things to me. So as the name builds, or if you're in a niche group, they're going to start understanding what those gestures and gimmicks mean. And they just start, they see me coming and they'll just take off their hat and hand it to me, and I'll just traipse around for a while. It doesn't always happen. And when you're in the hallway, you can't do that. I've started mimicking the way people walk. In robot form, because it gets their attention. So I've been having fun with that too.
You're also really good when we do little bits. You'll do like this mirroring thing that's really fun. So again, you're a creature of chaos when you're in your character, and there's a little bit of a youthful feeling to that chaos. But also the automaton is not a child.
No,
so
that's true.
So the mirroring is not quite childlike, but it has some similarities to like children learning things. So as a performer, it feels like I have entered an agreement with an alien being who's come to the planet and doesn't know how to human. And we're having a moment of learning to human. It's really fun the way you do that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to connect in a way, you know, when you have, it's that human element, like you said, because that's the way that people are going to relate to the character. Technically, Asgard is not a human, but she looks a little bit like it. And as soon as I start mimicking people, sometimes they'll really play with it. And if they don't, that's okay too. But you know, we're all learning, which is great. I'd love to connect with you to answer some questions or just chat about.
We have cards.
We do have cards.
And a QR code.
Yeah, and great question, by the way. Also, your cosplay looks beautiful. Yeah. Last question.
Did you two in the back have a question? Okay.
All right, we're at time, friend of Dax, and we're going to skedaddle out of here. You can find us up at the Tucson Steampunk Society booth upstairs near the entrance. You can find these two wonderful humans at Asgard and Lady Wheelsworth all over the interwebs. You can find me everywhere as Madame Askew. I also brought cards. So if you'd like one, they're here in my pockets. Otherwise, please come see us at the booth and come hang out with us at future events. All right.
You guys have
cheers.
cards, and I have QR code right here.
Yes. Just hit the X. Hit the X.
Okay.